My name is Dawie Roodt. I'm the economist at the Efficient Group. And now, every now and again, I get the wonderful opportunity to speak at the Free Market Foundation, and this was one of those events where I had the opportunity to analyze the budget after the event and to see what is going to happen now. Before I get to the budget and analyze the budget, one or two things that I think are very important. One is that I believe that the budget really goes to the heart of a democracy. And it's the responsibility of all individuals in South Africa to understand what is in the budget, where the money comes from, where the money is going to, because it's your responsibility to draw your cross, to vote for that political party that you believe will be the best for South Africa. And talking about what is the best for South Africa, I've had a look at the history of the ANC or the ANC Alliance, and I believe the ANC has been the most destructive force the South African economy has ever seen. The damage caused by the ANC Alliance simply cannot be calculated. And we're not talking about only billions of rands, we're probably talking about hundreds of billions of rands or even more. This is the most destructive force this country has ever seen. Looking at the budget specifically, from the beginning it is quite clear that there is a huge conflict within the alliance and within the ANC itself. And I'm referring specifically to Tito Mboweni, and if you listen to the tone of Tito Mboweni, his tone is that of a new liberalist kind of financial minister. He's talking about the role of the state-owned enterprises. He's talking about the excesses when you talk about the civil servants as an example. And that's not the sort of language that you read in the budget itself, and it's certainly not a sort of language that you hear when you listen to the rest of the ANC leadership. From that, I must come to the conclusion that I will be surprised if Tito Mboweni will be around as Minister of Finance for very much longer. I think there must be some sort of conflict, an ideological conflict within the leadership of the ANC pretty soon, and within the tripartite alliance a conflict and some sort of confrontation between the ANC and specifically between the ANC and the organized labor, and I'm referring specifically to COSATU. And that is something that is probably going to happen soon. We have to remember that the election is around the corner as well, and I'll just have one or two words about that in a few moments' time. Looking at the budget itself, you can analyze the budget by looking at the number of different variables. On the revenue side, just about nothing happened. This was probably the most boring and the shortest budget by any Minister of Finance ever. The only significant change on the revenue side was a quite substantial increase in personal income taxes, not directly, but by stealth, by so-called bracket creep. And the total increase in personal income taxes will be to the amount of roughly about 13 billion rand. There were some other tax changes, like for example on the so-called sin taxes and the fuel levy and the like, but in total the changes on the revenue side of the Minister of Finance was really very little, just about nothing happened there. On the expense side, the only thing that stood out was the relatively small amount of money that is going to be transferred or given to Eskom over the next couple of years, and that is 23 billion rand annually. Now that is a bit of a mystery, because Eskom needs much, much more than 23 billion rand over the next 3 years annually. Eskom is so deep in financial trouble that 23 billion rand is simply not going to make a difference. So there must be some sort of story behind this story, and I have a suspicion that we will have to wait until after the elections before we get an answer to that. In the meantime, we have a government running a fiscal deficit well in excess of 4% to GDP, which simply means that in an environment where the economy is growing at roughly 1% or so, state debt relative to GDP will keep on creeping up at a rate of 3 or even more percent relative to GDP annually. And soon we will see state debt levels, depending what you include in state debt, of 60% to GDP. If you include the state-owned enterprises as guarantees, it will be in excess of 70%. If you include some other liabilities, it may exceed 80% to GDP. So without a doubt, the state is in very, very deep trouble when you look at the finances of the state. In fact, I believe it will be a bit of a miracle if we are not downgraded by all the rating agencies, particularly by Moody's soon. And if that should happen, of course, it's not going to be good news for South Africa. So the argument is, after this budget, what is going to happen in the election? Should we wait until after the election? Because analysts tell us we have to wait for the good guys to consolidate their power after the elections and also sort of good things will happen. Unfortunately, I do not agree with that, because I think the good guys, or the so-called good guys, have been part of the government the past 10 years in any event. So the question is, who should you be voting for? Certainly you cannot vote for the ANC, the most destructive government this country has ever seen. And also with a compromised leadership, and if we look at the policy of the ANC, that's certainly more socialism. If we look at the DA itself, the second largest party in South Africa, it's pretty much policies which is the same, and to a large extent of the ANC. The leadership is not a very strong leadership, but fortunately for them, they have quite a good track record when it comes to governing in certain instances. And the third largest party in South Africa, the EFF, I'm afraid that is, you can equate them to the Chavistas, what is happening in Venezuela today, and we all know that is not a nice place to be. This budget was simply a time-consuming exercise. The Minister of Finance waiting for the elections, and after the elections, and after a new cabinet has been announced, chances are Tito Mboweni will not be part of it.